Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the return of True Crime with the Sarge. I'm your host, Joseph Giacalone. We have a great show lined up for you today, but I just want to take a quick second to thank everybody who has been reaching out to me over the last several months, as me and my family had gone through some tough times. But the wife is doing well. She had a surgery about a week and a half ago, and things are looking up. So I'm all happy with that, and we're going to start doing some live shows now, and we're going to get into this today. Without any further interruption, I am going to bring in Josh Zeman, who back in 2016, I think it was, right, the Killing Season on A&E.
Yep.
I guess there was the seminal documentary on the Long Island serial killer case, but he's got some other awards that just came from the Checkpoint Zoo. Josh, tell us about it. You won a whole bunch of awards for this the heroic rescue of a 5,000 animals from Ukraine behind enemy lines. So that's pretty wild.
Yeah, it's a documentary that I did. I went to Ukraine twice when the war just started, and we did this documentary. We just won an award at Miami Film Festival, documentary award at Minneapolis Film Festival, a couple of audience awards. In addition to the other awards we won. So, been kind of running around the country doing these festivals. So, haven't. That's why I've been back and forth on social media.
Well, congratulations. That's great. So we have a lot of stuff to talk about. So it's been quite a while. It's been about 9 months or so since we've been on video, but we've spoken over the last several months, of course, about all the different developments out of Gilgo. And last week was no different, right? So last week we had something that you and I have discussed that they knew about for over a year. We find out now that they knew about for over 2 years.
Yeah.
So yeah, to toot our own horns, we were right about that. They knew who Peaches was, and Peaches turned out to be Tanya Denise Jackson. She was 26, I believe, and her daughter Tatiana Marie Dykes, who was 2 years old. Both of the victims' remains, or some of the remains for Tanya, were found on Long Island in a place called Jones Beach. And then, of course, we had the toddler, Jane Doe. So, and she was found all the way out in Gilgo. And we've talked about this before, Josh, right? There were
Yeah.
bookends of everybody in between that.
That
And
still kind of. I was just looking at that as we were actually, I was getting ready to go on. I just wanted to look at the map one more time and kind of figure out the whole bookend thing. Because I remember when I told you that a while ago, you were like kind of freaked out by it. You were like, "Oh my god, what does this mean?"
yeah,
And the question is still, what does it mean? Why the bookends? Uh, Peaches was found. She's the only victim. Tanya is the only victim found in Nassau County, which I think is obviously very important. Was that intentional to split up between the two, Suffolk County and Nassau County? Number one, and then when you look at it, you know, Baby Doe, thankfully now Tatiana is all the way on the bookend side, and so that's very interesting. Was he trying to separate these two victims to obscure identification?
yeah, no, it's something that we've spoken about. And actually, when we found out the other day that this was actually going to go down, we were both very excited for the fact that, as part of, and from a human's perspective, right, this case to me held a lot of value to it because of the baby, right? This whole thing is that the most horrific thing out of this whole incident that we're dealing with is this toddler. Not that takes away from any other victims, but because,
Absolutely.
yeah, here we have a 2-year old. And the issue that comes down to is, now that they have their names back and now investigators are doing what they do, right? We have to identify everybody that we have. There's still one person remaining, which we're going to talk about later on in the show,
Yep.
because there's some other developments coming out of that. But let's get back to the Tanya, right? So her last residence, she was from Brooklyn. She worked in a she worked in a medical office too. So there's reaching out. They've named all the branches of the military that she was in. All the different kind of shows. Excuse me, shows. All the different kinds of units that she was in,
Yeah.
and to reach out, because, like I said, as older generations like myself, we're not really into all this stuff. I had to learn all this stuff, but maybe their kids say, "Hey, Dad or Mom, weren't you in this unit in the army?"
Mhm.
And or maybe, did you know this woman? So that's just something that really it was a good move by. by the Nassau County Police to put that out there.
Yeah. Well, I think first and foremost, why now? Right? That's the real question. Why did they, if they couldn't link her, Tanya and Tatiana, to Rex, why put that information out now? And from Nassau County, and then why was the DA Tierney not there?
Oh,
I think this brings up a couple questions, right?
oh yeah. Let's since you brought it up, let's talk about this, right? So there wasn't a representative from the Suffolk County Police Department, nor was there a representative from the District Attorney's Office. Now, do we read into this? Oh, absolutely. And honestly, I didn't really hear much talk about this, but I definitely want to delve into this because I think that is a big deal that nobody was there.
I mean, what does it mean to you?
It means to me that somebody is not happy about maybe coming out with this information quite at this moment, because the reason why is the Fry hearing still going on with the other cases.
Yeah.
Now, of course, we have the internet is running with their own theories about what has gone on, and now this adds fuel to the fire just in case there are charges down the road. Whoever the defense attorney for that person is going to be is going to bring up every one of those other things and saying, "Look, this was where it was," right? So that's that misdirection kind of stuff, and I think that's what might muddy the
Yeah,
waters a bit.
but don't you think? I mean, Tierney has done, I think we could say, a masterful job of this whole case. We're really seeing a proper district attorney lay out the case, and also, trying to deal with the sins of the previous administration, right? So, don't you think that he is in lockstep? Like, he has got masterful control. Like, he's in lockstep the whole time. So obviously, these two DAs are talking. Why would Nassau County jeopardize anything that Ray Tierney is doing? Like, they would never want to do that.
No,
So
I agree with that.
yeah, so don't you think, while there wasn't a representative there, maybe there could be another reason why, i.e., like, if Tierney doesn't have answers for this case, like, it doesn't bode well, like that could be used as a kind of chink in the armor for the other case. So maybe he wanted to separate himself, not be there, so that it was any lingering questions were somewhat separated.
No, I agree with you. But the only thing that I bring back is that the baby Tatiana clearly found in Suffolk County. They're a pair. They were both together the day they were murdered, and then
Sure.
one was left in Nassau, one was left in Suffolk, and therein lies the jurisdictional issue. And if
Yeah.
it was intentionally done by the perpetrator, whoever it might be, was a maybe they didn't think about it, but if they did, it was actually a masterful job, so to speak, where they created this kind of issue with the jurisdictions because that's a big problem.
Yeah, I mean, we saw it like when I looked at other serial killers, like the highway guy in Florida. Like he said, yes, we used jurisdictional issues to dump bodies in one jurisdiction because we knew that there was problems they didn't communicate. So obviously that happened here. But the question is just, you know, why now? I mean, I believe that it was actually a very smart move to bring this up, even if just the identification. First of all, we had talked about it. Kind of, there were a lot of rumors going around that that they had the identification. Number two, like, you don't want any unanswered questions in that case, and everybody's going to be like, well, what about the baby doe? What about baby doe? What about baby doe? So at least they've got some answers that take away a few of the questions. Of course, the question is still, who did it, and is is this tied into the same crimes that Rex has been charged with? So I think maybe it was a calculated move to bring up this information now to eliminate some questions and at least, try and do that.
It's, listen, I mean, we're not trying to make a big issue out of nobody being there, but I think it has to be questioned about, uh, you know, if this is part of the task force. I mean, the FBI was there, and
Yeah,
so
yeah,
there was different elements of the task force. But if I recall correctly, they didn't mention the word Gilgo Task Force at all in this case.
yeah, because they don't have an answer for that,
Right.
right? So let's not bring up, let's not create questions. Let's just try and answer, like, at least the identification issue. But I think it was a smart move. I
But the
think.
internet did its thing anyway, though.
Well, you're never going to win with the internet. Come on.
The internet did its thing anyway. But yeah, I mean, listen, we know that, think about how fast this case, not including, of course, Peaches and everything else, but this entire case. I mean, these were answers to questions that have been lingering on for 27 years.
Dude.
And yeah,
And I'll be honest, like I didn't go on social because it would like this one hit me hard. Like we had looked for Tatiana and Tanya for who they were for 10 years. And so I don't know. I was just, this one hit me hard. And I just kind of like remained quiet and just kind of live with my thoughts for a little bit because this was one of the ones. I think this was one of the biggest mysteries, right? Because we always thought that maybe Baby Doe Tatiana would be the answer, would be the clue. Now, one of the things that we do have an answer because we all speculated was if it is Rex, okay, was Rex the father? That was a thing that came up, and so now we know that that is in fact not the case.
right.
So,
And that was another rumor dispelled, of course, in regards to, what we see on the internet for sure. But you know what though? I look back on some of our other lives that we did. We mentioned the Peaches case almost in every one of them, and talked about, yeah, because I mean, this is where that human side needs to come out in people and understand that these were real victims and respect that they deserve to have their names back. They deserve to have justice, and especially the youngest of all, right? You have to keep the youngest and the oldest in our societies the safest. And unfortunately, that didn't happen in this case.
and God, what a cute kid.
Yes. Oh my God. And when you look at the pictures, right? Now when you have the face on it and you get to learn about their backgrounds and everything like that, it really, like you said, it's a gut punch, right? When you look at that little cute baby and you sit there, it's like, how could somebody be so terrible, right? We will keep this a PG-13 rated. Uh, it's just something that we're, like you just say, it's just like, wow, finally we got it. We've been following this case for so long. And here we are, right? So I know I saw a clip from your A&E show from the killing
Yeah,
season.
yeah,
A&E wasted no time putting those clips out on Peaches by making getting the B-roll out of the closet. We,
yeah.
witnessing all of that. That was pretty ironic. But
As they do. Well, I guess like one question, right? We interviewed that guy Steve Cullen, the tattoo artist. And
mhm,
so like, do we still believe that Steve Cullen was right? I don't know personally. Every time I'm like, I don't know, like something crazy with this case happened, so you can't really say never. I'm still not sure. He did say that she was from, I think, either the Bronx or Brooklyn, so it could be that he got that one right. I really don't know. I really don't know with regards to tattoo.
well, from what you and I have always spoke about offline, of course, and we actually mentioned it on a couple of things. Is Brooklyn seems to be a hotbed of some of these other open cases that you can really start raising an eyebrow about. So when we found out exactly who Tanya was and where she was from, I went, "Oh boy, here we go!" Right? So, it's one of the first in this whole stream of different cases that became really a newsworthy item. But
Yeah,
Sandra Castilla is listed as the first case of LISK, right, of Rex Heuermann. And I shouldn't call it LISK because there's different cases that are following in there. The the off the White Lotus. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, welcome back. It's good to be back. It's good to be back. Thank you
oh,
very
so
much.
I just want to say from everybody, like everybody that I speak to, myself included, like we are very happy that you are back.
Well,
So thank
thank
you.
you. Yes, thank you. I mean, it was touch and go for a bit there. It was tough, but the wife needed full attention and I had to drop everything and
Uh,
do that. So, and so
Well,
many people like yourself, Josh, reached out to me over and over again, and I won't forget stuff like that.
thank you. Well,
So,
I know I speak for everybody when saying that we are so happy you're here.
thank you, thank you, thank you very much.
Now,
Um,
now get to work.
yeah, now get to work. So, you there was one thing in the presser that to me rung a bell. And what I mean by rung a bell is that they said it multiple times, and I'm sitting there going, "What's the big deal that she drove a black Geo Storm? Like, what's the big deal?" Like they keep on mentioning, and this is not the Geo Storm, but here it is, and she drove a black. Then Josh and I got on the phone, and we're talking about stuff, and then we started talking about things. And say, you know what, we better hold it for Sunday because we're gonna end up not remembering all this good stuff. So When you first heard about this geostorm over and over again, what was one of the things that came to your mind?
Well, number one, I had a geostorm. I
I
don't
had
think
a
I
Geo
told you.
Metro, so there we go.
These were the vehicles that always tipped over. So I remember it. But why? Well, you said it because I didn't quite know, but you said it what you thought, which was
Right. Well, the only reason why, first of all, it held no investigative purpose initially, right? It holds no investigative purpose, and then I said, well, wait a minute. They keep on telling us about this car because either they believe the suspect used it or it was
hmm
for a meetup, right? So
hmm
I had just been out to the crime scene. I did a quick video. If you guys haven't seen that, you can see it later on about In Search for Peaches. I parked at Field 3, and the body was left, I mean, within like 100 yards of where that was. So then I started thinking, did this person, whoever the suspect is, meet up with her at Field 3? And now say, and now they have, not only do they have the kid, but they got the car and they got all these things. Now, when
because
the police kept on,
that's how the baby got there.
right?
Via the car because she drove the car because she didn't have because and then you remember, right? They also said, "Oh, she used to drop the keep the baby with a friend." Like they specifically said that.
Yes.
That's a weird thing to specifically say.
Which eliminates any pickup on the street, any pickup on the phone call, because whoever was responsible for this would have never taken her and a small child in their vehicle. Never happened.
No, so she showed up with the baby in the back seat with the Geostorm.
And he had no other choice. This was it now. This was his destiny. He had already, whoever this individual was, had already made up his mind that this is what he was going to do, and now he's got this two problems, right? Not
Right.
only does he have to, not only does he have to, actually three problems. Not only does he have to overcome his initial victim, but now he's got the car and he's got the baby. So when you think about it, those are three big mistakes that this person makes. Uh,
Huge.
in
Huge.
regards to this. And that's why now, when we were talking about this, I said, "Oh, I think I might have figured out why the police were thinking about this." Now, the cops know where the car was found. Okay. And I doubt the suspect left them in field 3 or on the side of the road, because that would have been an easy park ranger would have went by, saw a car parked on the side, would have been like, that would have been the big red flag that there's something wrong.
Right. So you do all this forensic countermeasures, what have you, to like put the body, you mask identification, you put the body there, but then right there's a car that's found pretty close by that we don't know who it is. Or so, do you believe the state police, right? State police would it have been?
Yeah. Well,
Would have
there's
made,
park rangers too that go through that area.
would have made that connection. Oh, we found this, tub tragically with this torso. We don't know who that is. And on around the same time, we find this abandoned geo tracker. Are those connected?
There we go. Right. So that's why this thing lasted so long. But the question now comes down to where was the vehicle found? And when it was found and was probably impounded, because to me, whoever got rid of the car would have to have done it within walking distance to get back to where his or her car was. Because at nighttime, if you're doing this, you don't want to be like a park ranger doing their shift at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, seeing this car, thinking that there's funny business going on in the car, like a couple of kids meet up,
Yeah.
because that's what what used to happen in occasions. So come on, guys, go home, and then
Mhm.
find all this stuff. So this is to me is a much bigger deal than what they had just intimated. They just said kept on saying it, and I think that's the reason behind it.
So the question is, he got in the car and drove the car outside of the park, parked it outside of the park, walked, or you could say take a cab, but you wouldn't really want to take a cab,
Yeah,
walk back, and then got into his car.
that's the only way to me that this person would have been able to deal with the vehicle.
And then, and then, and I'm sorry to kind of get into the details, but like, and then brought the baby and Tatiana and Tanya in his own vehicle to his house.
Or wherever this happened, right? Because she's dismembered, right? She's dismembered, and I can't imagine that and this is going to sound what it goes. So just brace yourselves, folks. I doubt he let the baby live much longer than that. He wasn't going to. keep the baby alive with the mother. He just
No,
wasn't.
that's not
I'm
good.
sorry, that's just, but that's part of this whole thing, right? To get into this head of this guy, whoever it is. I mean, this is what we're dealing with in regards to this. Just want to make a quick shout out to Sinead. Thank you very much, and the boiled frog. Thank you very much for that from the UK. Thank you guys. I appreciate that so much.
So, so does he take care of the car first with the victims incapacitated in his own vehicle?
Right, and he would need a vehicle big enough to be able to hide right. So here's where, if you had a vehicle where you can load it from the inside of the vehicle and close it up and then get rid of the car. And in this case, if a park ranger did come and look in the car, they wouldn't see anything, right? So it would have to be an enclosed area within the vehicle.
Chevy Avalanche.
Well, I mean, that's the only vehicle that you can store stuff from the inside, keep it closed, and you can't see it. I mean, the Chevy Avalanche is a phenomenal truck when you take a look at the storage, the capabilities of it. If you are a construction person, that's why they were pretty popular with construction people, because of their versatility on how they can carry stuff. But
Yeah.
to me, right, the person would have to take a chance, leave his vehicle wherever it was,
Yep.
and dispose of the other vehicle.
But assuming that this is a call, right? This is a call, right?
Mhm.
This is a meetup, i.e., he
Right.
calls her and meet up. So she's got to bring her car. So he knows about the car issue, right? He knows he's going to have to deal with the car issue, just doesn't know about the baby issue, right?
Right.
Well, then I do have another question. Why go through all these forensic countermeasures and leave the jewelry on?
And the tattoo.
Tattoo was interesting, and obviously this was early in the game for him.
Mhm.
After he realized later, wow, tattoos could be a problem.
Yes. Well, one thing that I've learned through my experience working in the cold case squad specifically is that when you're dealing with these, we'll call them pattern cases. I know they don't like the word serial in police departments, but we call them pattern cases. Uh, you always try to identify the first couple because that's where the most mistakes were made. And
Exactly.
when you're taking a look at something like this, there are so many mistakes that were made, and this is where investigators can capitalize on these things. And I think that's what we're seeing right now in front of our eyes. And I think that was the hidden clue of this entire press.
That
That's
about this back and forth, which means, by the way, he got in the geo tracker and drove it.
yes. Yes, yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. I mean, where did they find the geostorm? Where did they find it?
Right. Sorry.
Yeah. What was in it? What was left in it? Was there any evidence that something terrible happened in there? But here's the other thing, right? It could have been put somewhere else or hidden somewhere else, and the car wasn't found for weeks or months later because they still couldn't put two and two together,
Yeah, like
right? Well,
the minute it goes outside of the state police, there's too many abandoned cars in Long Island. Are you kidding me? Like there's a huge amount of them. So the minute it goes out of that area, I think nobody's going to know about it.
exactly. And
Wow.
then look how long it took for her to get identified, and they had to do so through investigative genetic genealogy on top of that, where the clues were there, but they weren't able to put them together because the abandoned car, wherever it may be, wasn't they couldn't put two and two together that this was somebody that they found.
Yeah. Crazy. So that also means that there could be, well, I mean, I don't want to get into details like how he would have disposed of the bodies, but he's bringing forensic evidence with him on his person, maybe into the car as he's sitting into the car, right, and then dropping it off, and then going back to his house. And we still don't know what the situation is with the wife and the daughter being in the house or not being in the house during that time. We don't know. We don't know
Right,
what the deal is.
right. And then the other thing is the Rubbermaid bucket, which we've discussed before, an
Yeah.
enclosed case with a towel and a pillowcase. The
Yep.
likelihood of hopefully having transferred DNA evidence, I always felt was the greatest possibility in this case out of any of them.
Yeah, because there's so much material.
and it's enclosed, right?
Right.
And it was protected. It wasn't in the elements per se. Yes, it was in the heat. Yes, it was, so that you can't, but it wasn't rain, it wasn't snow, it wasn't those other kind of elements that you
Mhm.
had to deal with, like you dealt with the Gilgo victims in that respect,
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
where even the salt water and the salt air, all that
Sure,
stuff
sure, sure, sure.
affected all that.
But we don't know
And
that. We don't know if there's any DNA, right?
no, we don't know. But from what I also heard, and I can't confirm nor deny any of this stuff, is that Peaches wasn't exactly a torso. That she was missing her hands and her feet, but not cut off at the top of the thigh and not cut off at the arms. And her unfortunately her skull still hasn't been located. But yeah, so it's not a torso per se. That's what I've heard
Yeah,
through certain channels. But the issue comes down to is I don't know for sure, and we will find out eventually
right.
exactly what unfortunately happened there.
So, so the other thing to I don't know that I've been kind of like thinking and looking at here is Sandra Castillo, 93, Karen Bergata, 96, um, this 97, Tanya, right? 97. So what you have is you have dismemberment and body parts being going around. You have Sandra Castillo, North Sea. Then you have Karen. We could assume dumped off the bridge. And that's how the legs got to Fire Island. And then you've got here going the opposite way from Massapequa, if it is Rex, of course, going the opposite way, Hempstead, right? So it's just this, we're seeing these kind of body dumps that are very interesting, and then they start to change, right? And then later, then they start to go to Manorville specifically. So it's just very interesting. But there's also one thing that I also find interesting. How do you go from Massapequa to Hempstead Lake? You take the Southern State Route
Southern State
24,
Parkway.
you go up the Meadowbrook Parkway, and you go over. It's the simplest route. And what happened on the Meadowbrook Parkway?
Yep, Carmen Vargas.
That's right.
Oh no, there's so many different. Listen, as like I said, this was a rabbit hole, but now that we have identified Peaches, it starts to open up a whole other avenue. Yes, nobody has been charged with her death, and nobody is suspected yet, right? They made that clear that no one has been suspected. But you can run with this wherever way you like. But when you start connecting the dots on certain things in certain cases, because the big talk right now is she doesn't fit the profile.
Oh, Peaches?
Yeah,
Tanya?
Peaches. Yeah, Tanya doesn't fit the profile of what Rex liked and the
What?
girls that he's been charged with. I guess the
Pro-
only thing that is her race, as far as I'm
Because she's
concerned, is the only
black?
thing that separates her.
Because she's black?
What?
Because
Yeah,
she's
I think
black?
that's what people. Yeah, and they had the baby, having the baby with it. But yeah, I am not a. Listen, that's to me. I mean, Sandra Costello was
Light skin? Trinidad.
Trinidadian, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Trinidadian, and she was. I think she was mixed race in that, right? So I think her mother
Yeah.
was. Yeah, I
In-
don't remember, but she's mixed race, so she's not white. But they're all fit the same thing. They're all petite women in regards to all the victims. Very petite women. I
Does
mean,
Asia Doe fit the profile?
right?
No, but
Yeah, I mean,
you could say it doesn't fit the profile, but where are the bodies found and how are the
yeah,
bodies found? The bodies
right.
are
And
found
like,
in Gilgo Beach. I mean, you may say it doesn't fit the profile. Okay, why is Tatiana found 600 feet from Valerie Mack, all the way out? Like the real question that you should be asking is like what came first? Like obviously, not obviously, but Tatiana could have come first. He knows where he knows where he put Tatiana, and then he puts Valerie Mack like 600 feet next door. He wants like he's furthering his bookends. You know what I'm saying? Like that is so specifically placed. That's the issue.
right. And you know what? If remains of Valerie Mack and Jessica Taylor weren't found on Gilgo, no one would have believed they would fit the profile either, because they happen in Manorville, and that there's no way. But here we have DNA on top of that, and this is. Oh, I think Josh froze up on us there. We'll wait to get Josh back. So this is where we have to do. So, question from Not That Mickey. Thank you very much, Not That Mickey, for your donation there. It says, question, what do you think he's been up to since 2011 and 2023? Yes, that's something extremely. Uh, oh, Josh just said his power went out, so we're going to have to wait for him. Yep, we're just going to give him a second. So, I'll answer these questions as we go on there. This is something that Josh and I were going to discuss in regards to like where has he been. I don't know if you guys remember, but when this case kind of first blew open, they had asked this. I actually didn't ask a question. I put out on Twitter that if I was running this investigation, I would have searched the Massapequa Preserve all the way up through Bethpage State Park, which is the big golf course, which is a famous golf course. It's the one where they play the professional rounds at the Black Course, I think it is. It's 1,500 acres, and he lived around the corner from this. All right. That to me, so I had just put that on Twitter at the time. And lo and behold, the New York Post picked up the Twitter post. And I started getting bombardment from all these media outlets, like saying about what this whole area. Well, from when I did hear that the Nassau police were not very happy about this, and I mean, you're talking about, like I said, 1,500 acres of it. And to this day, I don't think that they've ever looked in there. And if they did, it was really the best kept secret because if you remember, there was a body parts case in Bethpage State Park by the golf course that turned out not to be related. But this just goes to show you that this place is so huge that you can hide just about anything in there. People don't realize how big Long Island really is, and that's something that you really have to. So I hope that answers your question, Not That Mickey. But there was a couple other questions here that I missed because the chat is flying. Okay, Josh is back. Okay,
Crazy.
you're back. Yep, I was just answering a couple of questions that they have on there.
Sorry, my,
Um,
my power just went off the minute I said that.
we got to see who's downstairs flipping the switches. We want to make sure they don't get any other information out there.
So yeah, I
So
don't know. Yeah, I don't buy any of that. I mean, that's just my opinion, but I don't buy any of
yeah,
that.
no, I listen. I think she has to be included in this whole thing just because of where the victims were found. I've said from the very beginning that this was a one serial killer case way back when Josh and I first started talking about this in 2015, 2016. We were doing the Long Island Radio News Network shows,
Oh
and I
yeah,
tell you,
but it is a
and
two serial killer case, and I'll say that because I have many questions about Bickroff. Many
oh
questions.
well, especially the Sandra Castella thing. I
We,
listen. I think John Bitroff's name is going to rear his ugly head again
me
this
too.
year.
Different show, but but are we talking about one serial killer or two? I mean, like with regards to the Gilgo victims, we're talking about one. But there is some very strange connections that I'm still not 100% satisfied on.
Right. Well, I had mentioned this before, right? We had four serial killers operating on Long Island at the same time.
That's nuts.
Four. Four.
When we did the show, we were talking about. I remember, yeah, we were talking about was the Manaville Butcher and LISK the same, but then we still were talking about Rifkin and Schulman. Nuts. Which is, by the
Yes.
way, not that's not that crazy. You have in any major city, they used to say there were 3 to 4 serial killers operating at any one time. Of course, that's more than 2 victims, and that includes gang murders, et cetera, et cetera. But look at LA in the 80s, the South Side Slayer, getting mixed up, with the Grim Reaper. Like, it's not that nuts.
No, I mean, so Sheila's brought this up. We could talk about it now.
Oh,
Josh, do you think they know the identity of Asian Doe and are just waiting? I don't think so.
I don't think
However,
so.
I don't know if Gizela is still in the room, but the Grizzlies, like she was in earlier,
Oh,
she
right.
sent she sent out a tweet yesterday and brought out the Asian male Doe as the last unidentified individual victim from this whole Gilgo investigation. Othram, and she said that the only one, and Othram said, tweeted back without being tagged into it, not for long. or something similar to that,
Yeah, I
or only a
read
matter of
this.
time.
It's only a
Only a
matter
matter
of
of time. Only a matter of time. So I was like, whoa, hold the phone here, right? So now Othram has released the fact that they have been working on Asian male doe to try to identify him, which was a big secret, not anymore. And
hmm
I'm sure there's going to be all kinds of media stuff from Newsday and Long Island Press will be talking about that particular tweet for sure. They should be, because it's an important aspect of this case, finding out who what the identity of your victims are.
That's that. Oof,
This
crazy.
case is taken on, like, think about the exponential part of this whole thing. So Sleuth Investigates, thank you very much. Says to learn what Tanya was a veteran as well had me in tears, and they released her and Tatiana's names. Do you know what unit or MOS Tanya was attached to, and what led her to New York after discharging? Welcome back, Sarge. They did mention several different units that she was working in. They also said that she was a Gulf War veteran. So I
Mhm.
don't know if she was deployed overseas, and we have no idea. Well, New York City, Brooklyn has a huge military base, and there could be some connections to that as well as other cases, maybe too. Brooklyn seems to be a hotbed of things. Josh and I are working on a whole bunch of stuff on that, but Brooklyn
Yeah,
is a hotbed of potential victims here.
yeah. I mean, first, before we go to the Brooklyn side, I was always interested, like, Peaches, Peaches. Why Peaches, right? She's from Mobile, Alabama. Theoretically, what's the Georgia connection? And who took the bite out of the peach? Who hurt her emotionally, or so that was one of the things in trying to find out, where the husband lived. uh or you went through the list of all the places that she had been. She was pretty not transient, but like had been moved around
Yeah,
quite a bit. So that also says, what kind of relationship did she have with her family? Obviously there's a lot of, because the DNA couldn't be traced through, that we're going to assume, and because of Elijah, the relative we do know, he had a bunch of different relationships. We have to assume that the family wasn't the most concrete family unit, right? She
right.
goes, who goes into the army? She goes into the army maybe to get away from a kind of, crazy family situation. She gets moved around a lot. you know I think there was some question about the husband, who seems to be cooperating. Why didn't he, uh, say that she was missing? I mean, who knows what that situation is? Could that just been another soldier on at one of these many bases that she was at?
Well, and I don't know if we know for a fact that it was a husband, right? It could have been a boyfriend,
Yeah.
or just the father of her child too, which would then make sense about the being estranged and not really keeping track. If she just said, bye, I'm out of here, that kind of thing. So that's something. And I've been looking for some information about if she was married to, I think his name was Andrew, if she was married to Andrew or not. But from what I've seen so far, it doesn't look like they were. So
Mhm.
that would then eliminate him as, why didn't you say something? Because the reporter asked that question. Did the father report them missing? And they said no. And I don't think actually the captain, when he said this, he didn't really look um, prepared
Shocked.
to answer that question. Yeah, he
Oh.
didn't. Yeah, he didn't look prepared to answer that question. But it was a good question. But to me, there would have been other follow-up questions to ask instead of that.
But just like people's, family relationships are crazy. There's just so many variables in that. And the same thing goes back to, like, why did nobody say that she was missing when she worked in a doctor's office? But we don't even know what she was doing. Like, I had thought, like, oh, well, maybe she stopped working in the doctor's office, got fired, who knows what it is, and then went to sex work. We don't know that she's a sex
We don't know.
worker,
Yeah.
but maybe that's exactly why she went to sex work so quickly. So we don't really know the situation. It's really hard to tell. um and just like, again, when they were saying, like, oh, she used to drop the baby off with a friend, like, why would they say that? It's just it's a weird kind of thing to mention.
Yeah, I when I watch these pressers, and I try to tell people that you got to try to look for the clues, some things that are hidden in there, certain things that just don't make any sense to the average or the casual observer, or just went over somebody's head. I kind of look at it and say, kind of like that, and the geostorm again. Those are the kind of things that you sit there and go, like, why do you keep on telling us this?
Mhm.
Sometimes they just need to be blunt about certain things too. This case is 27 years old. Pussyfooting around certain details and the facts. Remember when they put out the belt, right? And
Yeah,
they put out the belt in one of my favorite instances of this whole case, right? We believe that this person might have touched it, right? Okay, you know, um, but this at this point is 27 years in the making. I don't think you're going to hurt the case at all. And trying to play, now trying to play this game where you're just like not putting all the facts out is to me is a little strange in that regards. But who am I,
yeah.
right? I'm just some old retired guy that screams, "Get off my lawn!" When
But here's what still annoys me to no end. Well, number one, you remember when when the show, this was weird, by the way, with the show was over and it had been going on A&E, and Field Notes was one of the web sleuths had said that I don't understand why these two individuals aren't in Namus, you know, or why they weren't connected. And so myself and Rachel called, we got Timothy Bolger on the phone from Long Island Press. And then we got Todd, the guy who passed away tragically, Todd Williams. I can't remember his name. He was great guy from Namus. And then we got on the phone and then we
oh,
called,
Todd
yeah,
Matthews,
Todd Matthews. Thank you. Nice guy. Who found Tent Girl, right? Didn't
yes,
he? Yeah.
the tent girl.
So we called um, we called the Suffolk County Medical Examiner's office, and that's where they had to admit that Peaches was connected to these other body parts that were found on Gilgo, and then i.e. baby. So they were keeping that a secret. Now that might not be so nefarious. They don't like to give that information away. And obviously we still see examples of them holding back information for years. They had Peach's identity for 2 years. So that's not that nefarious, but it's just so interesting. That was a little bit interesting. But the other thing is, and I don't know why the news isn't picking this up. Guys, look at the initials in the tattoo. I looked at them. I can't tell exactly if those initials, stand for, TMD, the daughter, or TDJ, but it sure looks like a TM to me.
Oh well, that's for T for sure, right?
What?
T for sure.
T for sure.
T for sure. So yeah,
So
no, and we tried. Yeah, we tried. Actually, I had put that on if you recall, we did a show about the tattoo, and I put it on a post on this YouTube channel in the post section, and everybody we were working on this, and I think just about everybody has T as the first letter
absolutely.
for sure. And now we have Tanya and Tatiana. I mean, we can probably put the other two letters together.
I don't know if it's an M or a D, but it could be either one of those.
Yes, it's a little blurry. Probably, I mean, with a better high resolution picture or the actual photo that they took at the either at the crime scene or at the autopsy would be helpful.
Which brings us back to another question, right?
Okay,
And
sure.
again, I don't want to get too gory here, but he's looking at these tattoos, right? Like on a table, like he has the victim on a table looking at these tattoos, right?
Right.
He's torturing them, and I'm sorry to say it, but like he learns from that situation, which is why Jessica Taylor had her Remy's angel tattoo scratched away. Like he learned from that. So I wonder if he saw, I don't know if I doubt he saw the initials in there, but you never know.
No, but the other question is that there is no way that whoever is responsible for Tanya's death didn't see this tattoo because it was right on her, I think, left breast, right on her
Yeah,
left breast above her heart. So, I mean, you couldn't say that. Well, you missed it. It was in a spot where you couldn't see.
no, and and he had a whole bunch of breast mutilation videos.
Well, and there's also a reference that Rex made in his videos. He might have learned from this case, either from the news or what have you, about removing tattoos.
Yeah,
You know,
which was why Jessica Taylor's Remy's angel tattoo was
Right.
done.
Well, I mean, he definitely learned from somebody or something. That's for sure about removing tattoos. So, I mean, something to think about. So, Vicky had asked, was the car moved by Rex 6'4", seat pushback? Oh yeah, that would have been an interesting ride, right? Getting in that thing. I
Oh my
mean,
God.
I'm not a big guy, and I would have I had trouble getting in those cars.
That's a great question. That's a great question.
It would have just been a head. All you would have seen is a head in that thing. But it's listen, there's something about the car. I might be totally wrong, but there's something about that car. We will
I
find out eventually.
yeah, absolutely. Why Hempstead?
Why Hempstead Lake State Park?
Yeah.
Because it's desolate. I mean, it's I was just like I said, I was just there about a week or so ago, and during the
Hmm.
daytime it was pretty desolate.
Hmm.
Could you imagine what it would look like at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning? And it's accessible all hours of the night. I mean, there's no chain things. Well, at least back in the day, there weren't. When I was a kid, there weren't any locks and this and that, so you could drive down these things and park your car and do whatever. But the issue that comes down to is it is quiet, it is off the main road, easy on, easy off the Southern State Parkway. I tell you,
Hmm.
you would think back and say, I'm surprised this wasn't a location for other victims because that's how easy it is to get to.
Hmm. Hmm. And you think she met him there?
I would say so, yes. Yeah. I mean, let's put it this way. She didn't meet him in front of his house, right? Or she wouldn't go to the house with this
Yeah. Well, that's
too much. Yeah. Yeah.
the meeting is the only way. Is the only way that the quote unquote mistake with the baby could happen. You know.
And I mean, I don't know about the technology today, but cell phone use back then was rare, if at all.
If at all.
So I mean, the question comes down to is how was that contact made and how was this meetup done, right? So it could have been just the old school rotary phone bit.
Or
So
beep
that's
or beeper.
or it could be beepers, but somebody had to make the phone call. You had to they had to get contact her from somewhere, right? Whether it's a pay phone or what have you. If it's a beeper kind of thing, we're spoiled today when things something like that happen. Everyone says cell phone, social media, but that didn't really exist back then. I mean,
And
it
then
was in the infancy stage for sure.
right, Rex would have been 32 at the time.
Right, which is still kind of old for this.
Well, if you
Well, that's why
consider,
Carmen Vargas puts it the timeline much younger. I think would be put it at 25.
yeah, and Carmen Vargas body bound in the ankles, rope on the neck, towel over the
Yeah.
face, towel in this thing, Meadowbrook Parkway, right in between Main Road. By the way, found southbound, i.e., going to his house. He dropped her off on his way to his house. Make an assumption here, obviously.
Yeah, allegedly, right? Yeah, I mean, if yeah, right now no one's been charged in that case either. But if you start trying to connect the dots or see if cases should be included in this investigation, that's where we're headed with this. I mean, that's well, we do know that they were taking the Gilgo Task Force was taking a hard look at Carmen Vargas.
Yeah,
That
but
was
what
a
happened?
public statement.
Sure,
Well,
but
like everything else, they just
sure,
you
sure,
don't
sure,
hear
sure.
the end of it until they make an arrest or something.
Okay, but this is something we also discussed that doesn't make sense. Why is Sandra Castillo found in a very different scenario, i.e., body intact, than the rest of these victims?
Right, and if you thought about the fact that where she was picked up, someone would have seen him that he needed to dismember some of them because they was afraid that someone would have seen him get in the car. And somebody, I think, believe they did see Sandra get into a pickup truck. Um, or I mean, this is I mean, listen, there's so many cases that sometimes you get confused about the exact the exact cases on some of these, but maybe that was Carmen Vargas. I have some notes on here
No,
that somebody saw one of these victims get into a pickup truck, and
I
that was
think
the
that
last time they saw him.
I think that might be Carmen Vargas. I'm not sure, but I'm the fact that the dismemberment, again, forensic countermeasures started before, right? Didn't they start before Sandra, or we actually don't know? Actually, I'm wrong. Forgive. Sandra Castillo was found kind of intact, and Karen Vergado was the first victim where we actually see this dismemberment, right? So, and
Right.
then correct me if I'm wrong, but Carmen Vargas was found intact as well.
Yes.
So,
Yeah,
you
actually
know,
posed provocatively, apparently, and that's why Spoda and his crew thought it was all Bitroff, because the other two girls, Colleen McNamee and
yeah,
Rita Tangretti, were found the same kind of thing. They were posed
right.
provocatively.
Right, but then the quote in the paper came in saying new digital evidence reveals that Huerman had significant collection of violent bondage and torture pornography dating back to '94, and I'll get a graphic here. I apologize. The images include breast mutilation, vaginal torture, the sexualization of decapitated women, and bondage. These notably and largely coincide with how the remains of Castillo were found.
Exactly. I mean, yeah, and we don't want to get me banned my first date back, so we have to be
Right.
careful whatever words we got to be careful what words we use here. Um, Actually, I mean, we have over 510 people watching this live, so I want to thank everybody for coming back so soon into this whole thing. It's Josh Zeman with me here, the Killing Season A&E, and of course his new one, Checkpoint Zoo, that's winning all kinds of awards. He's with us today. We're just going through a variety of things that have been transpired over the last week, and now we're actually reaching back until last July when some of these other cases broke. But
Oh, by
go
the
ahead.
way,
I'm
Joe, I
sorry.
did want to mention. So it looks like we're going to be doing a podcast about this case.
Okay, great.
So not official yet, but it looks like it's going to happen. Be doing anywhere between 10 to 12 episodes. Not going to reveal yet who it's with, but we'll be covering the lead up and then the trial.
Excellent. We'll be
So
looking forward to that for
we'll
sure.
be
Yep.
getting.
I mean, this I mean, listen, this case is still there's still lots of stuff going on. I mean, I think the defense starts their Fry hearing witnesses, or they started their defense witnesses. And look, this is it. The entire case for Ray Tierney hinges on what the outcome of this Fry hearing is. It's as simple
Um,
as that.
one of the things to get back to Brooklyn,
Hmm.
Tanya Rush. Tanya Rush, Andre Isaac. Does are we seeing the edges of the Brooklyn crimes? And we were looking at these crimes as you saw in the Killing Season earlier, but it didn't make there were too many differences.
Yeah.
The Long Island, but now knowing about Tanya and Tatiana both being in Brooklyn, now being Black, it starts to change the question of whether or not he was killing in Brooklyn and whether or not some of these other victims that we didn't know whether were tied are tied. And Rex has a lot more victims out there. And what does that mean?
Well, exactly. And you mentioned Andre Isaacs, right? Sugar Bear, who was found in two different places, one all the way out in Suffolk County, not far from where Sandra Costello was found. And it was found in a frozen lake. I think they found his skull,
Yeah.
and the
Yep.
rest of his remains, I think, were in the Rockaways. But the issue that comes down to is that case was something that is really bizarre because it was not on the public Gilgo Beach official webpage. However, if you had at the time, I don't think you could do it anymore, but at the time, if you Google, I think it was Google News. I think Gilgo News was the website, was the official Suffolk County website. But if you Googled Gilgo News, Andre Isaacs, his entire case showed up as
On the
a on the website as part of the investigation, which was really interesting. And of course, they kind of poo-pooed it when it became a big deal.
they said we were just testing the website. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So you just created
yeah,
a whole victim profile, put it on there just as a test, not to test it with anybody else. Right.
right. Well,
Right.
yeah, just leave the Latin stuff that they give you when you're testing a web page, because they always give you
Right.
that WordPress gives you that Latin stuff. Just wanted another shout out to Not That Mickey. Thank you for gifting a membership. I really appreciate that.
So
Uh,
yeah, now cherries, I'm not so sure, but the other thing that you could say though, right, because the test of whether or not it was connected theoretically to the alleged suspect could be Rex. We don't know, we're saying that, but like the test always for me was, okay, yes, it may seem like it, is there a body part that was found on Gilgo? because if there was a body part found on Gilgo, that's usually the logical thing, right? And which we have for Carmen Vargas, we have for this. Now, number one, is any of Sandra Castillo's body parts, other body parts, and again, I apologize for getting so kind of graphic about this, found on Gilgo Beach? No. So that's one question, which raises more questions. And then what about Andre, Tanya Rush, and all those others that we think are connected, Carmen Vargas, that we think are connected, but no body parts are found. However, I go back to the same thing that Dormer, the first police chief, when we interviewed him way back when, and I said this to you before, I asked him at the end of the interview, is there any questions that I didn't ask you that I should have? And he said, yes. You didn't ask me if there are other bodies still on Gilgo Beach. So, are there other bodies that we just have not found on that beach? And I guarantee you may say, well, they've looked at it. No. If you've been there, you know that you could be 5 feet and not find something. So, we could find some of those other body parts there easily.
I mean, we had Hurricane Sandy, of course, that
Sure.
kind of washed out that entire area. But the other thing is, I was very critical in the public regarding when the Suffolk County Police decided to actually do the searches for these things. They waited for the brush to grow back in, because remember, these were all discovered in April of 2011, when everything starts to grow back in. Like, why weren't you doing this in January, February, and March, when the thicket wasn't so thick?
Look, I had spoken at length to Dormer. I don't think there's anything nefarious with Dormer. Obviously, the other guys completely, right? But I think he was just out of his league. Very rarely do police departments have to deal with serial murder cases like this. And so, he was always like, well, we couldn't get the guys back into the brush, or a lot of the questions were centering around Shannon. Like, why did they search for Shannon earlier? Because they had to drain the swamp. But yeah, I remember people didn't just want to go in there. You need officers to do it. You need cadets to do it. And the cadets didn't even want to go do it because we had spoken to a couple, because there was so much poison ivy. Like they were like, no, I'm not going in there because there's so much poison ivy. You need people to step through that stuff.
But even with the technology, with all the drones that they have, I mean,
dude,
do something.
Sure. I don't know, drones back then. I think that they didn't want to either, because every time
that's a whole other story. Yes.
Every time they did, they found another freaking body. And I'm sure Spoda and what's his name were like, oh, well, let's wait.
Well, like I said, I was very critical about the timing of this.
Has anybody heard from Spoda recently?
No, he hasn't reared his head out of anything.
Is he technically in jail?
No, I think he's out.
Okay.
He's out.
But he did spend time in jail, right?
Oh, yeah. A couple of years.
That's crazy. The fact that there's a DA in jail is a huge thing. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, well, listen, we could go on with Burke and Spoda and the mishandling. But we also made a prediction that the Michael Brown, the attorney for Rex Sherman, is going to bring up the very public argument between Spoda and Dormer.
Yeah,
Dormer said that there was, at a press conference. We've mentioned this before, and I still can't, publicly arguing at a podium how many serial killers there were responsible for these Gilgo cases.
Again,
I think Spoda said 3 or 4 people.
Well, that's part of why the whole thing of were there 2, what's going on? Yeah, first of all, public arguing but knowing when you say that, you're going to ruin the case. That's however many years in the future. How could you do that? That's like JV.
Oh, that was absolutely. We'll just talk about this quickly. It says, did you or Josh watch Gone Girls on Netflix? I'm very curious on the girl that worked at the club and went to a condo or townhome, so that she fled. Said the guy looked just like Rex. Yeah, I did watch it. I mean, listen, there wasn't anything new or breaking that we didn't already know. Uh, it was, I'll say it for you, Josh. It was like a ripoff of what you did and of what Lost Girls was about, which was Bob Colker's seminal book on this thing. And, nothing really new or really exciting in that kind of stuff. Actually, here's a plug. I did a documentary with News Nation on this with Laura Ingle and on the CW about a year or so ago, whatever. I thought that one was better, but I'm a little biased in regards to that. But a lot of the stuff is rehashed on the Netflix thing. They did a really good job, make everything look nice. Spend the money on making it look nice, but I don't think there was anything there that was groundbreaking or new. So, I mean, there's been lots of sightings of Rex. I mean, you can't miss them unless apparently there's only been one photo of him or one even interaction with him on the Long Island Railroad. So to say that, people missed him, here's this guy, biggest day, uh, riding the Long Island Railroad. So,
I
and nobody ever brought it up.
I didn't see the show because I asked my people if I should, and they said no, it'll just make you angry. So, so I don't need any more stress in my life. I didn't, but I did hear that they had the Sarah Carnes, who we found and interviewed, that they re-interviewed her, which I think it's pretty significant.
Yes, but they did show Catch Lisk's map on the Netflix show. So that was actually a good thing. It was a cool thing. I'm like, hey, I know that map. When they were doing it. But I had to watch it because um I did my first time back in 9 months. I did Grizzly True Crime with Gisela, and she was going to ask me about this. So I had a homework assignment. So I had to watch this 3 hours worth of stuff on the thing to talk about it. And I was a little disappointed. Let's just put it that way. But I'll give it a rotten tomato for sure. But thank you, Cherry Pops. Glad you're back. It's glad to be back in the saddle again too. A little rusty, but
Oh, you're fine. You're fine. You're fine. You're back in.
Josh, we had we're up to 534 people. So just tell us a little bit more. So we had Checkpoint Zoo won all kinds of awards.
Yeah,
Uh,
and
you gonna
if you uh, sorry, it's going to be in Vermont. So we have a website, checkpointzoo.com, where you can see a trailer and see where it's going to be. We're going to be playing at the Berkshire Film Festival. If you do see the film, please do me a favor and just rate it on Letterboxd. You can see all our great films. And of course, if people follow me on Instagram or Twitter, Josh Zeman, Zeman, I'll get you more information about the upcoming podcast. And what I would love to hear from people is things that they want discussed on the podcast that have not been discussed before, because we're going to do a deep dive into that. We're going to rehash some stuff. The other thing is we're going to which is kind of interesting, just going back and looking through some of that old killing season footage for clues, because there's
yes.
clues in there from our conversations with everybody from Dormer. I mean, we interviewed Mary Gilbert before she died, with Dormer, with Dave Schaller, with the sister. There is a lot of people that we interviewed that I swear we've never gone and re-listened to that stuff to find out how close we kind of got. Even the, posting to Backpage that we knew about information about, LISK without really knowing, just seeing if we can draw them out. Like, there's crazy stuff there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's well, like I said, just learning to make a short video, how important B-roll becomes part of your thing. But for you, Anita, with a thank you very much. Thank you, Joe, for this podcast. Hello, Josh, and welcome. So glad you're back, Joe. I'll become a member. I can't do it on my phone. Oh, thank you very much, Anita. I really appreciate that. Um, I would love to sit there and watch that because you got to sit down there with a notebook and a pad and get that stuff out there because that's going to be interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be crazy. It'll be nuts. It'll be nuts. So let me ask you a couple questions.
Okay.
When do you think the trial is going to start?
I was hoping July, but this is going on. This Fry hearing is going on longer than I thought. They're going to give them at least a month or two after the Fry hearing's over to get their stuff together. So July is a possibility still. It's still on the table, but they'd have to get that done really soon because we're already that May, right? This week is May.
Yep.
So,
Do
I
do
mean,
we do we feel, is there a chance that Rex may do something so that the trial doesn't happen? I mean, what could he do? It change his plea to guilty, right?
yeah, that ain't happening. Yeah, I don't think that's gonna happen. I don't think he's gonna
Right.
confess. I don't think he's gonna talk because he just what has he got to lose? I think the
Right.
evidence right now is mounting up so much against him. I think that, if I was his lawyer, I would just say, Let's going to take it to trial. Maybe something can happen. Maybe something gets thrown out. Maybe we can find a juror on there that's sympathetic, and we end up in a hung jury, and they don't want to pay the money to do all this again.
Or maybe we bring up Burke over and over and over again so that there's enough, and then use all those weird things that theoretically came up, to figure that out,
Well,
right?
it's definitely going to be fodder. Jim Burke is going to be the major fodder for all this stuff. I think we should keep track. If we're watching this trial, we're going to keep track of how many times James Burke's name gets mentioned in this
Take a
in this
take a
defense.
shot every time. Take a shot
Yeah,
every time Burke's name gets mentioned. We'll be drunk.
in the first day. Uh,
Exactly.
so so all right. Listen, Josh. It was great talking to you again here live. And
Great.
everybody, I want to thank everybody from the bottom of my heart to coming out here and has been supporting me over the last several months as I was going through some really tough times. And but things are looking up, so that's a good thing. But Josh, thanks for your time. You hang out 1 second, everybody. You enjoy the rest of this weekend, and we'll be back with some. I'm going to have a show lined up for next Sunday. We'll have a forensic expert coming in, and we're going to do investigative genetic genealogy. She's going to explain everything to us.
Oh,
So,
I'll have to listen to that one.
yeah, she's a former office of chief medical examiner from New York City, so she
Oh,
knows her stuff.
cool.
So we'll talk offline, and then I'm going to announce it this week.
Thank you.
So hang on in there. All right, everybody, you take care. Have a great day.